The other morning I woke up to the sound of heavy rain pattering against the roof of my van, and I was filled with gratitude. It was as though the rain had washed away all of the guilt of my past and all of the worries of my future. And although I was filled with gratitude, I myself had done nothing to make it rain. It was something that happened to me. And it's fascinating because only the previous night I had pulled into this parking lot where I would sleep. And as I pulled in, there was a woman in a camping chair. She was sitting straight up in a foldable chair that you would take camping, and surrounding her were plastic bags filled with her clothes and her minimal belongings. And as the temperature dropped near the realm of freezing, she was glaring at the vehicles pulling into the parking lot, the semis, the vans, the campers, the various people preparing to sleep in their units. And she was about to sleep outside for the night. And when I saw her, I thought, in a world so cruel, in a world so filled with suffering, how could I ever be happy? And the problem is that when I saw her, I thought, that is me. I am that woman who's in that camping chair, literally. And I don't mean that if I were to make the wrong decisions in my life, or if I were to make certain pivots, I too will find myself sleeping outside, sitting upright as the temperature drops below freezing. No, that isn't what I mean. What I mean is that if I were born to her parents, if I had her exact same upbringing, her same childhood, I can almost guarantee that I would find myself in the same position that she's in. There's nothing that makes me different from her. And so, in the same way that if you go into a DMV or if you were on a bus, public place, and you saw an elderly woman standing up while you had a chair, somebody like myself, a young man, a fit young man, would feel compelled to give this elderly woman a chair. And so, ought that same principle apply to the bed where I will sleep? And I thought about it theoretically. There was really no pathway for me to help her in this situation. There was nothing I could do short of literally giving her my bed. But if I were to give her my bed, that would mean giving her my vehicle. And obviously I couldn't do that, and so my hands were tied. I was pulling into this parking lot and I had a warm place to sleep, but I didn't see what I could do. I just had to be near this person who was this elderly woman who was about to sleep in the cold for the night, and my hands were tied. And often I look at my life, and the guilt that I feel, if I'm being honest, the guilt that I feel is that my life is really good. I was born into a family and I had love from so many people. I was pushed in right directions. I was given great advice. Things laid themselves out in front of me. There were times maybe where I avoided certain accidents, and it's like God has been guiding every aspect of my life. And yet I am so imperfect. I sin, and I feel unworthy of my blessings. I feel my blessings are so numerable, and they're so nonstop. And what have I done to deserve such a good life? And yet, when I woke up the next morning, the rain was pit-pattering against the roof of my van, and it was as though the rain washed all of that away. The guilt that I felt of my past towards my blessings, the worry that I had towards the future. And I thought, if rain can come, and I had nothing to do with the fact that it is raining, in the rain, something out of my control gave me what it is that I need. And before the rain happened, I didn't even know what I needed. Then who am I to judge this woman's circumstance and say that exactly where she's at isn't where she needs to be? Who am I to try to shoulder her burden through empathy, through empathizing with her, and then deciding to see that the whole world is pain-ridden and full of suffering? I don't even know what's best for me. How could I possibly know what's best for her? And when I woke up the next morning, as the rain was pouring down, she was gone, and I haven't seen her again. But I looked at this emotion that I had, this gift that was a new perspective on life, something I'd never experienced before, a truly embodied gratitude. And my first compulsion was, I want to share this with other people. I want to somehow transfer this. This feeling is different. This feeling is new. I've never felt this before. It is a truly new perspective on the day. I want to transfer this to other people. I want to gift this to other people. I don't want to squander this. How can I give this to other people? Well, what is it? So I sat back for a moment and I was writing, and I was in a warm place, and the rain was now pit-pattering against the roof of this warm place. And I observed the emotion, and I thought, it's not... Typically when I feel this way, it is when I have this embodied gratitude. It is... You can articulate it by saying that I'm looking forward to the opportunities within the day. I don't see the threats within the day. I don't see the things, the negatives and all of the things that could go wrong. I'm just seeing life as one big opportunity. I'm seeing the training that I could do to better myself. I'm seeing the writing that I could do. And I'm knowing the gratitude that I know where my next meal will come from. I know that I can have a meal later today. The entirety of the day is good. The entirety of the day is full of opportunities. I'm not seeing the threats. I'm only seeing the opportunities. But on this particular day, a few days ago, it wasn't that at all. It wasn't that at all. I was immersed in the present moment. And it was embodied gratitude. And in that moment, I realized that in the same way that it's an issue to observe and perceive the negatives within the day, all of the bad things that could happen, and dread the day that is ahead of you, so too it is not good to look towards the future for the opportunities, because the opportunities and the threats, those are on the same spectrum. Meaning, if in that moment I was looking for the opportunities of the day, all of the things that I could do outside of the present moment where I am right now, where I was in that moment, if I started to gaze into the future and see all of the opportunities, well, I'm going to start to desire that the day happens in a certain way. I'm going to build up expectations that the day happens in a certain way. And with that desire will come the fear that it won't happen in that way. Inevitably, my mind will then my mind will build these expectations for how the day will go, a perfect day. And with that will be the fear of what could go wrong. And so I will drift back into the same way of thinking and thus the same way of living, seeing the negatives instead of simply embodying gratitude. And then I just observed the gratitude for a moment. I just observed this, my immersion in the present moment, the gratitude that I felt throughout not just my entire body, but it was in my mind and my soul. I was immersed in gratitude and in the present moment. And when I saw that gratitude, I thought, why would I not feel like this all of the time? This should be it's a problem if you're not in a state of gratitude. It's strange if you're not in a state of gratitude, because that is the nature of life. As in, I think we forget this often, but man, life is truly an unfathomably miraculous gift. And unfathomably is the right word, because you can't even really put it into words. We don't even know fully what it means to be alive. We don't even know how any of this is happening. Yet it is beautiful, and it is a gift that we perceive ourselves to potentially not even deserve at times. And then so I thought, why would I not always be in this state? Why would I not always just be in the present moment and immersed in gratitude? And the root issue is looking towards the future and looking towards the past. We have an awareness that things will end. That life is a beginning, life is an end. You are born and you die, and throughout the process of life, there's a lot of births and deaths throughout it. Stories begin and end. Your relationships with people begin and end. And this knowledge that we will eventually die, well, all that we can see, we don't explicitly see any continuation, as in, I don't know if anybody sees eternal life explicitly all of the time. I don't know if anybody sees heaven and has an explicit knowledge of heaven and what heaven is. And so we only see our bodies and the loved ones who we've lost, and we assume that their body is decomposing back into the earth. And so we know that our life will eventually end. And if our life will eventually end, then is it actually even a gift at all? The whole thing seems like a punishment, right? Because life is an unfathomably miraculous gift. But if you perceive it as simply a beginning and an end, and at the end, at your death, you will step into eternity, but what you perceive eternity to be is eternal darkness, eternal nothingness, then that is the opposite of a gift. That is closer to humiliation. That is like God or the universe, whatever you would call it, then giving you something, giving you this thing called life that is unfathomably miraculous, but then taking it away. The fact of giving somebody a gift and then taking away their gift, it would be better to have never given them the gift at all. And so I think that's the problem. That is the root of all of my problems, is that sometimes I perceive everything as eventually coming to an end, and so my mind begins to overthink and wanders into the future. And as it sees the brevity of life and how temporary my own life is, I have expectations for how my life then needs to be because I don't want to squander this thing, whatever it is. And so, in order to not squander it, I'm trying to live a perfect day today. But the reality is, that's what stops us from living. The reality is, that's what stops us from living, that perception towards the future and seeing your eventual demise and trying to rush, trying to push everything that you can into a life while you are here. But in the same way that one night I go to sleep and I see a woman who's sitting straight up in a camping chair with all of her belongings surrounding her. And although I know that I am like her and she is like me, and I could easily have found myself in her exact same position, the rain came the next morning and I had nothing to do with the rain coming, but it changed my perspective on the day. And so I needed that rain. I needed that cleanse, that thing that wasn't even in my control. And that thing that wasn't even in my control renewed me. It refreshed me. It is what I did. It is what was good for me. But before it happened, I didn't even know that's what I needed. I didn't know that's what was good for me. And so if I didn't know what was good for me then, how could I possibly know what's good for her? She could be exactly where she's at. She could be, or rather, exactly where she's at could be the exact right place. Right. And the day went forward, and I didn't try to live fully in the present moment because the thing about consciously thinking about living in the present moment, that's that's what thrusts you back out of it. That's what thrusts you back out of life. That's what makes you leave the present moment and be consumed with the worries of the future, the anxieties that you feel of not being who you need to be, making the most out of your life, and that anxiety reaching somehow back into the past, making you feel guilty for all of your blessings because you can see that you're not doing all that you can with your blessings. Getting rid of both of those two things, letting go of the past, letting go of the future, living in the present moment, ceasing to pretend that I know what is best for the world, what is best for other people, or even best for myself. And so, what I saw with this emotion, this new emotion, this emotion that was different, that was an embodiment of gratitude, but it wasn't the gratitude for the opportunities of the day. It was just the gratitude for life itself and the inarticulatable, the ineffable feeling of understanding fully the extent to which life is just an unfathomably miraculous gift. And that is how I lived that entire day. Without trying to do so, I just accepted the gratitude that I was gifted. And that is how I lived the entirety of the day. And interestingly enough, I've observed that feeling since as well. But not trying to put certain values on it, not trying to control it, not trying to paint that feeling as something that I want it to be, something that could be useful for me, because that too is part of the problem. When I had this thought that I wanted to give this feeling that I felt to you because I saw that it was beautiful, I saw that it was rejuvenating, and I saw that it was good, and I wanted to give this feeling to you. But then I saw, well, if it's fleeting within me, it'll be fleeting in with you. And so what's even the point? to have that way of thinking means that everything has to have a explicit purpose. And not only does it have to have an explicit purpose, but you have to know the explicit purpose. But then as I've looked back at that emotion in retrospect, I saw very simply what was happening on this morning and what was happening on this day. And what was happening is that my eyes were open. I was taking in the world, and I was taking in the world like a child would take into the world. Rather than try to manipulate things and try to control everything around me, I was and trying, and also rather than trying to, rather than allow my subconscious to reach back into my conscious mind and revert to seeing ways that I've seen things in the past, I deliberately went, deliberately and consistently went back into humility. And I was just looking at they curiously. I was looking at everything with new eyes and with curiosity, questioning what anything and everything was. And that is the feeling. That is the emotion. It's not really an emotion at all. It is a state of being, but it is embodied humility. It is curiosity. It is seeing the world with fresh eyes. And I remember a day when, before I was on this journey, before I was living in a vehicle, I had still had my house, and I was working a job that I knew that I wasn't meant to work for the rest of my life, of course, but I felt trapped and I didn't know what else to do. And so one day I had an off day and I was like, I'm going to the park. I'm walking from my house to the park. I don't care about, I don't know anything and I don't care about anything. I don't care about the responsibilities for the day because I just need my mind to wander because my mind feels trapped and I need my mind to not feel trapped. So on this day, I was like, I'm going to walk to the park. And that is what I did. And I walked to the park and I laid under a tree. This was probably 2 or 3 years ago. I laid under a tree. And this is a surreal experience. As I was laying under the tree, I was watching the sky, gazing up at the sky. There was some puffy white clouds moving at a casual pace, and I was watching them move across the sky. And as I was watching, my mind was wandering freely, and I had this strange sensation that it's not that I could see human form necessarily, but I felt like an eternal family was looking down on me. Something that you might call my eternal family. That's not even to say that they're different from my family that's on this earth. That's just the feeling that it was people who love me were looking down at me and they were delighting in my journey. They were delighting in my story. And oddly enough, that I knew that I wasn't perfect. I knew in that moment that I have flaws as a human being. And I didn't see explicitly my journey, but I saw the essence of the fact that I was on a journey, and it was as though this eternal family who was watching down on me was delighting in the fact that I was growing. And in that moment, all of my struggles didn't seem so bad. I didn't feel as trapped as I had felt before I had walked to the park. And it was a sensation that not only is everything okay, but I think I'm on the right path. And so I was laying under these trees looking up at the sky for hours, and in the same way that my I had a new perspective a few days ago, on this particular day years ago, I felt this new perspective after I felt like I was being gazed down upon and my story was being delighted in. And I was like, I want to go see the coffee shop. There was a coffee shop here that I visited all the time, but I was like, something about it. I'm very curious about this coffee shop. I've been here hundreds of times, but I feel like I don't know anything about this coffee shop. Somehow my mind has been renewed. And so I walked to this coffee shop, and as I'm walking through the coffee shop, there was I encountered a man with a bullhorn on the sidewalk, and he was preaching good news. He was preaching the good news of Jesus Christ, but he was doing it in a way that there was angst and something like rage in his voice. He was threatening people with his bullhorn, threatening that they are going to go to hell. But oddly enough, the state that my mind was in, having been renewed, I approached him and I was like, this is good news. Like what you're saying right here, what you're telling people, this is all incredibly good news. Do you realize that you're telling people that there is a man who is God, who has come down from earth, who has showed us the way and has died for our sins. And now the root problem that everybody faces, the thing that we are afraid of that somehow causes us to sin because of our anxiety around this thing that is the end, that is death. Do you understand that you're preaching the good news that it has been defeated and we need not worry about it anymore? And then he kept on telling people that they're probably going to go to hell if they don't change. And I walked away and I went to the coffee shop. But I think about that often because a lot of this world is theater, a lot of this world is superfluous drama. But my genuine belief isn't that when you die, you go into eternal nothingness. And I don't believe that. The reason I don't believe that is because of what I've experienced internally and externally as walking through this earth. But I also don't see it in other people. Truly, I don't think laughter would exist if that were the case. I don't think love would exist if that were the case. I think there is a faith and an optimism in this world so great. And if you just open your eyes and observe it, you realize that you need not worry and that you can deliberately look at these things that do cause you fear and that are in this inverted dance of fear and desire. The worldly things that we want because we view life as uh, an unfathomably miraculous gift, but it's a gift that's going to be taken away from us. And so we become resentful at that fact and we try to gather as many possessions and accolades as we can while we're alive, desire, and the fear of losing it and the fear of not getting everything that we could be and the fear of losing the things that we do have. All of that could be washed away and we could fall back into the true state of patience, humility, and gratitude. Right. Death has been beaten. We need not worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will have enough worries for themselves. And by worries, I mean tomorrow will have problems. There are things that we can do and make better today. And there will inevitably, we're not going to make things perfect so that there will never need be another solution tomorrow. There is a responsibility to carry today. There are sacrifices to be made. And it is good. It is life. And we need not overthink. We need not we need not indulge in this superfluous grandiosity of thinking that we are in control of everything. We need no longer pretend that we know explicitly what is right and what is good for ourselves and for other people, but rather know that life is an unfathomably miraculous gift, and it is not a gift that is going to be taken away from you. You give your life to God, and He will give you an even better gift. He will give you eternal life, and that is what we all want. That is all, that is through having the gift of eternity, we can find ourselves back immersed in the present moment. We know that that is true. We know that eternal life is real. And we can live fully in the present moment today. And that is all that I have. Goodbye.